on a platter, might you recall? We've got a small family business, and the family won't like this. They'll bust your kneecaps, ooh, wop-dee-doo, wop-dee-doo. They'll bust your kneecaps, ooh, wop-dee-doo, wop-dee-doo. Johnny, you told me.
Okay, welcome back to MIT, where today we talk about how to add HTML codes to typo. We're talking about the other MIT, music intonation therapy, that is.
That's right, and we've got some case studies to talk about proving that music therapy actually works. I know, shocker, but really, with all the science involved, it's a pretty complicated idea.
It sure is, and the first case study was done on kids with some pretty interesting brains. They were kids aged 6 to 15 years old with autism and who had trouble speaking. Now, because we know that autism is a spectrum disorder and vaccines do not cause autism, there are many different ways popping up out of the woodwork to help children with this condition. One of them is singing words instead of speaking them. To get background for this, you need to know that music, in this case singing, and speech are processed in similar areas of the brain. However, people with autism who have a difficult time speaking are able to sing perfectly. So why is that?
Well, the ability for speech comes from the frontal and temporal lobes, Wernicke's and Broca's areas. In children with autism, the connection between the frontal and temporal lobes can be impaired or improperly connected. With an MRI, it was found that, when listening to speech, the children with autism had very low brain activity in either lobe, as compared to what they called typical children, or those without autism.
However, when they listened to a sample of the same words, ordinary words like car, doctor, or even prince, that were sung, the brain activity was as much as 85% higher. They were actually on par with the so-called typical children. It was found that during speech, the connections between lobes were impaired. However, during song, the connections seemed to be restored and functioned normally.
This could be due to a phenomenon in the brain called neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the brain to change based on learning or learned behaviors. You know how they say that it takes a month to break a habit? Well, that's your neuroplasticity at work. And as you get older, the less your brain is willing to change. That's why you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Side note, it takes an average of 66 days to make a new habit, like an apple a day, or running 15 minutes a day. But who likes running anyways?
Anyways, back on track. The scientists doing this study then asked themselves, can we fix this connection or restore at least some of it and help them communicate?
To answer that question, you need to imagine the box you had when you were a kid. And if you didn't have one, you were missing out. That box had various shapes cut out of the top. Obviously, to get the blocks in the right hole, you had to stick the right shape into it, right? Circle with a circle, square with a square. Reproduction. Study autistic children aged 3 to 6 when neuroplasticity and habits are most likely to take hold because your brain is still developing, and using spoken words versus sung words, they discovered that the children were more responsive to sung words. The children, when asked to look at the therapist in the eye using spoken words, were unresponsive and otherwise uncooperative with the block activity. However, when asked to look at the therapist using sung words, the children were more eager to comply and the block activity went quite smoothly. The children even responded to being asked for a high five in sung words, whereas spoken words, they wouldn't even look at the teacher.
That's rad. I guess I don't have any neuroplasticity left then, because I can't seem to break the habit of biting my nails.
Thanks for that contribution, Kim. Moving on, we have Alison Woyawada. She's a retired music teacher who suffered a brain aneurysm. What happened was that Alison would start to smell garbage and that nobody else would smell it. Her husband took her to the hospital to get a CT scan, and that's how they found the aneurysm. It was the size of a quarter. You might say that that's not large, but considering the intricacy and the actual size of the brain, which is about 2 fists put together knuckle to knuckle, it's incredibly large. Alison decided to undergo a surgery that required chilling her blood and stopping her heart, which would render her clinically dead. They would first stop her heart, then take off a portion of her skull and cool down her blood through her brain. After her brain was chilled, they would have about 30 minutes to operate or risk permanent damage to the brain.
After the surgery, Allison was put into a medically induced coma for 2 weeks, and when she next woke up, she couldn't even remember what had happened. Her husband frequently had to remind her of where she was. However, the largest change was that Allison's vocabulary was that of a toddler. She would speak words without correlation, believing them to be a sentence. 2 weeks after her surgery, Allison's daughter wheeled Allison, still wearing her helmet because of the healing skull, to the only piano at the hospital. There was some sheet music, and Allison started playing. Perfectly. This prompted her husband to find a music therapist.
Allison's brain was a jumbled mess, as anyone's brain would be if they underwent the surgery that she did. Her husband found music intonation therapist Cheryl Jones, who had been practicing music therapy since 2007. Cheryl used music to help Allison reorganize her brain and regain her speech.
Cheryl then began putting simple phrases like "I'm hungry" or "I want some water" to tunes like "Happy Birthday" and "A Lewd Lang Syne." If Allison started humming a certain tune, that would mean a specific thing, and when asked a yes or no question, she could nod or shake her head.
Through a long, grueling process, Allison began to regain her speech. To hear her speak today, you would never have known her past. She says that she doesn't remember much of her time at the hospital, or many of her sessions with her therapist, but her brain remembered how to speak, and speak she does.
And once again, signing off, I'm Geneviève.
Megan.
And Kim. Thanks for watching, and tune in to our next video when we discuss chromotherapy and the mystery of color.
Don't forget to listen to some music before you listen to this to remember more. And I dare you to try singing "I Want Some Water" to the tune of "Happy Birthday." It's harder than it sounds.
Signing out. See you next time.